folks, we're going to stay with this. On the Voting Rights Act, the GOP might lose the vote. I don't know that, but they could still win the issue. That's the subject of the rift. So look, even though the Senate GOP may not have the 60 votes to actually pass the Save America Voting Rights Act, doesn't mean they can't talk about it. In fact, they should talk about it constantly, not only because it's so popular around the country, but it goes to the heart of our democracy. It's a privilege to be a U.S. citizen and a privilege to vote. So whatever the Senate Republicans need to do to keep this issue alive, as President Trump is exhorting them to keep it alive, they should do it. Now, I'm not going to go through all the rules of talking filibusters or filibusters. I think the issue is more important than the technical legislative mechanics of the Senate. I'll just say this. Maybe there's a way to get a reconciliation bill. All right? I don't know. That's only needs 50 plus 1, 51 votes. Anyway, today's New York Post has an excellent article about how illegal immigrants and others are able to vote in U.S. elections. Now, in one sense, it's very simple. There are lawful residents who are here legally, but they're not citizens. Therefore, they should not vote. But judging by this article, and it covers, I don't know, over half a dozen states or more, there are probably hundreds of thousands of illegal immigrants who somehow figure out a way to vote, and they shouldn't be able to do that. There are about 14 million people who are in the country legally, but who are not citizens. That in 2023, according to the Pew Research Center. Now, this is in the New York Post article. And while those folks may have work permits and visas, they still can't vote. That's why proof of citizenship and photo IDs are very, very important. Heck, you need a photo ID to vote on the floor of the U.S. House of Representatives. Actually, you need a photo ID to vote against it. Just you can't vote without a photo ID. Now, we counted at least 65 different areas last night, all of which require a photo ID. Getting on an airplane, joining a gym, adopting a pet, buying tobacco, adopting a child, the Lord's work, buying a cell phone, donating blood, applying for a job, picking up mail. The list goes on and on. But there's one area that doesn't require a photo ID, and that's voting. So for Senator Schumer to call this Jim Crow 2.0 and infer that it is somehow racist voter suppression is just nonsense. But there are more nefarious attempts to vote besides lawful residents who are not citizens. Some people deliberately lie, then they get busted. Some people manage to vote even though they're not even lawful residents with proper visas. Some people have a bunch of felony convictions but manage to somehow slip through the state voting law nets. Some of the illegal voters are Republican, by the way, or even some members of the Conservative Party in New York. Sorry to hear that. Democrats keep calling non-citizen voting a myth. But the more they offer that phony defense, the more examples pop up in various research studies and court documents. So let's not have this issue get completely chewed up and mangled over Senate rules, which are sometimes impossible to understand. The key point is the Save America Act is a very good idea, and Republicans should do everything they can to explain the issue, to keep the issue alive and in front of the public, keep asking Democrats why proof of citizenship and photo IDs are a bad idea. Have them explain that, or just get the darn thing passed, but the burden's going to be on the Democrats.